My name's Sandra Faber and I'm joining you from Broome in the Kimberley region of northwestern Australia, the nice hot tropics at the moment. In this session, Living the Four Wisdom Themes, we engage with the foundational structure underpinning the universal education and the 16 guideline courses. In this workshop, Marian O'Dwyer will explore what the wisdom themes are, how they are linked, how they support each other, and how we can bring them into our everyday lives. I've been most fortunate to participate in several workshops with Marian over the past couple of years. And as a global community, we've been brought together through online live facilities. So that's been a real bonus. And the opportunities have been so enriching personally and extensively. And all the programs that Marian has delivered that I've been part of have been so easy to apply in everyday life. So truly life-changing. Marian brings people together in an engaging and interactive manner, and I really look forward to the unfolding of this session. In the session, Marian will present information on the four wisdom themes, and then we'll have a breakout rooms where people will have the opportunity to discuss issues or questions put to us by Marian. We'll have to see what's up for us. And then in the end, we may have some time for sharing and maybe questions. For the breakout groups, we have an interpreter, Dani, who will interpret in Spanish. So if you are a Spanish speaker and would like the interpretation through the breakout group, please look at the chat to see how to rename your name and include ESP or SP for Spanish, so that Dani is able to do a translation for you in real time. So with 30 years of experience in teaching mindfulness-based practices, Marian is a senior accredited faculty member of FDCW, teaches all the levels of 16 guidelines, as well as 16 guidelines for children and teens, delivers building balanced empathy. Marian is a key facilitator in training our next generation of participants as facilitators. Marian's based in Spain and delivers courses both online, face-to-face, in person, and in English. And also, Marian has a good working knowledge of French and Spanish. So we welcome Marian to present the four wisdom themes to us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow, that makes me feel a little bit nervous. How do I follow that, Sandy? But it's great to be here, and wonderful to see so many friends, new and old, and some folks that I'm looking forward to getting to know. So, four wisdom themes. There are four of them in universal education and 16 guidelines. So we're going to explore each one of them as it comes up and see how we might live that. What useful tools could we apply to that wisdom theme so that it can become an easy part of our everyday life? I'm going to just share with you the first little slide, which shows us the wisdom themes. I think most of you are very familiar with them, but some people I don't recognize. So just for anyone who's new to this, these are the themes that underpin our 16 guidelines programs: how we think, how we act, how we relate to others, and how we find meaning. Yeah. So we're going to explore those, and we're going to investigate a little bit how they're connected and how each one supports the other. So the first wisdom theme, we'll jump right in. How we think, and change your mind, change your life is the tagline that we have with that. And then I thought we'd just take a look at what William Shakespeare had to say. Why then, 'tis nothing to you, for there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. This is a very well-known quote. We're all familiar with it. However, I found it interesting when I was looking it up, just reading a little bit about it, that Hamlet said that when he felt, and I don't know, probably most of you know this too, when he was feeling as if he was trapped, as if he was imprisoned in the castle where he was living. yeah, which was his home, but he felt imprisoned in it. And I had this thought then, wow, it's almost like sometimes we feel imprisoned in the way, perhaps I remember in my younger days feeling a little imprisoned by my reactions and responses and ways of thinking. So that might be quite useful to keep that in mind. Okay, so there we are. So, okay, how we think. That we are conscious thinking beings, we know that. But the unresolved question is, how do we know that we are conscious? And how do we think? The scientific community has not found the answer. Some propose that the answer may be hidden in quantum theory. It looks pretty interesting to me as far as a novice like myself can understand. But other scientists just claim that the brain does it all, is the only operating factor in thinking and consciousness. Is it just solely the brain? Or is it mind? Is it our body? Is thinking a subtle combination of all these three? Most of us have been born and educated in cultures, excuse me, that prioritize engagement with our physical environment. We are educated to think about, learn about, and explore our external world. Normally, we turn outwards to learn from, generally for me, from Google, books, of course, experts and teachers. We interpret our lived experiences through the lens of our habits and our learned likes and dislikes. And these are expressed through our emotions and our feelings, expressions of how we think. So in many ways, the expression of how we are thinking is manifested in how we act and how we relate through our emotions, our feelings, our expressions, our verbal communication, and our actions. Okay, so it's an interesting proposition that each of us shares a commonality in our thinking process. However, each of us has a slight deviations and perhaps quite large changes in how we see things based on our experiences in this world as human beings. So I'd like to try a little experiment, if that's okay with you guys, and we'll see what the result is. If you've got a pen and paper, you can write these down, but I'd be happy if you could share in chat, because we're only going to write a few words. It's not going to be a long written thing, but if you can share in chat just to everyone, your results, we can find out. So this is our experiment, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to say a word. I'm going to repeat a word once or twice. And I'd like you to, each of you, to choose the first two words that go into your head once I've said that. Don't have to think about it too much. Just allow whatever comes up to be the words you choose. And then to share those words in chat, and we'll see how that works out, right? Okay, so let's see. Are you ready? All right. I'm going to say the first word. All right. First word is hat. First word is hat. Just pick up two words. And if you want to share them in chat, that's great. I'm going to go through three of these words in the end. So we'll check in the chat once we've done all three, okay? All right. Now, here comes the second word. You ready? Baby. 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 Just two words that pop into your head. Let's share them in chat. Wonderful. All right, we're going to do one more. Ready? Sunshine. 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 Okay. So for sunshine, let's go. We have happiness, bright, warm, bright, bright, radiant, bright, joy, light, Okay, now I think we must be going to the baby. Here we go. Rain and soap. Pleasant warmth, spring. Maybe, where are we? See, I don't know where we are. On shoulders. Okay, here we go. Babies, moon, happiness. On shoulders, warmth, happy, golden, wind, warmth, love, purity, love, crying, tenderness, grandchild, tree, crying and soft, holding close, calf, free, nice. Okay, so now we're on to the hat. Hair, trilby, walking, colors, cat, mat, cover hair, cat, cold. Wonderful, round, felt, protect the head, scarf, cap, many. Wonderful, this is just great. So we could hear echoes with each of those words of something that we all share in common about that word, yeah? And at the same time, some of those words jumped out as being quite unusual within the context. Rain, for instance, with baby. And those are the things that we indicate by how our own person, we can see that our minds, each one of us, has its own perceptions based on its experiences and how those experiences have become instilled in our consciousness or awareness in some place, at least in our thinking. Yeah, so great. That's really good. So we can see that we share commonality, whilst each of us has a personal perspective. Yeah. So how do we get to know, to befriend our mind, to understand how it brings us thoughts, which generate actions, which form relationships that give meaning to our lives? One direct method is to practice mindfulness. It's also known as shamatha, shine, or calm abiding. More recently in our courses, we've given it the name basic awareness. This method, whatever its label, has been very effective and useful for most people, and it underpins all universal education programs and courses. Where understanding the process of how we think is concerned, scientific research results and wisdom traditions agree that it's of great benefit to turn our attention inwards. By observing our thoughts, their comings and goings, their power over our decisions and choices in our lived experience. By becoming familiar with our remarkable capacity for consciousness and wisdom, because it is a remarkable consciousness. We say that we use 10% of our brain capacity, or our capacity to think in general. So let's see if we can't explore ways to open that up and to explore more deeply how the mind is and how we can make it our friend and a tool that we can become familiar with. So getting to know our mind and befriending it, devoting a few minutes each day for caring for ourselves by taking time to simply sit in spacious silence. It's a great way to develop a deepening of awareness of how we think and how we can bring welcome change into our awareness and change our lived experience as a result. I know that most of you are very familiar with the practice of spacious sitting awareness, but let's just take some time to do it now together. Bring ourselves into this space together, and yet each in our own personal physical space. Let's settle ourselves in our chairs, wherever we are, or on our seats and our cushions. We'll get on with it. Yep, so there we go. So, Lama Yeshe said, put your mind where your body is. So let's do that right now. Let's simply, I'd invite you now, if you'd like to take some intentional deep breaths just to bring yourself present. 1, 2, or 3, whatever works best. So let's just sit and attend to our sitting. Spacious and silent. We can recognize that the inhaling and exhaling of the breath brings us life and brings us connection. Each of us shares that act wherever we are. Each of us embodied and present here today. The breath nurtures us. The body, which it nurtures. The brain, which is one of the instruments most important, is nurtured strongly by oxygen. As you sit, please be aware of your feet as they touch the ground. Hopefully they're planted, so there's a sense of connection, of being rooted. Be aware of those feet. How many miles they've walked, how many dances they've danced, how many wiggles they've done, how they've been warm and cold, how they've been put in shoes and socks and sandals and walked in along the beach. Had a lot of time with us, taken us many places. We can offer gratitude and feel that connection. They bring us to the earth. We can have a sense of our body as it benefits us and cares for us. The body is also more than that. The body is often an indicator of how we are, how we are doing within, how are our emotions. If we want to focus now, bringing our attention upwards towards our stomach, we can just pay attention to how it's feeling there. How do you sense the stomach? Just imagining all the many microscopic beings who are benefiting us by working hard and functioning in great ways to support our digestive system, which also is critical in keeping us alive and present. Sometimes that digestive system has what we call butterflies. I don't know how that'll translate into Spanish, but we talk about that. Oh, I've got the butterflies. It's as if we've got butterflies fluttering in our stomachs. It's often an indication of a little anxiety or stress. We've worked with that. I've worked with children in alleviating that sense of butterflies in the tummy by suggesting, just imagine those butterflies. And we can do that now. Let's just imagine. Maybe now in your stomach, they're at rest. If you'd like, you can put your hands over your belly too, just to be more aware of it. Maybe they're at rest. Maybe there's a few fluttering around. You know how they pop up, and let's see if we can allow them to settle, just to find little branches where they can rest, little places where they can just be at peace, quiet, and just close their wings so we don't have to have butterflies anymore. Those butterflies that come from brain neurons. We are thinking with our stomachs. Let's move up our body to our heart area, that area in the center of our chest. turn our attention to it, get a feeling for how it is right now. We're here gathered together with friends to share some time of reflection. How's the heart? How is it doing? We can think about, reflect on a friend or a family member, maybe someone we haven't seen for a while, that we care deeply about. Let's focus from the heart center. Let's send them a wish, a heartfelt wish of love and caring, that they are well, that they're happy. Let's take a moment. Maybe it's an elder person or a child. Someone who perhaps really needs that energy right now, caring and love. Now please just take a moment, if you like, to rest and be aware of that heart center. How is it feeling? Maybe it feels a little warm, a little expansive. And then let's just drop back into letting go of those, being aware of body areas, come back into our breath, just supporting all those activities. Just now take a moment to come back together, letting go of any particular position. If you'd like to stretch a little bit, or just wiggle your shoulders, whatever feels like a nice way to come back together in a more lively way. Okay, thank you so much. You know, many fields of research have been recently confirming, and again, I'm sure many of you are aware of this, that the complex body system includes neurons in the areas of the heart and the stomach, similar to those in our principal brain. And they have the capacity to independently register awareness and communicate to our consciousness. So when we feel a stomach upset, has no reasons, we might realize, oh, maybe I'm a little stressed, maybe I'm a little anxious about that. And I think that these are becoming more issues in society these days. I've been reading and noting in the United States, over 50% of teenagers have anxiety-based issues who have been to seek help for that. So it's very important if we can work with these facets and help people, and especially children, to overcome these anxieties that are created by our society, probably by a lot to do with our societal activities. So interestingly, I'm going to share a slide which might seem a little out of sync with what we're doing here, but I think it's a lovely slide, and it shows us how all traditions have shared this awareness of a loving consciousness based in the heart area, not in the head, as our Western teachers so often like to share with us. The top one, the yellow heart, is what's yellow gold, is a Sufi emblem, and the lower heart is the Inuit for compassion and wisdom. As you probably all know, bodhicitta, which is a Tibetan word, actually means the heart of enlightened mind. So in a sense, compassion, but in a sense, mind. Yeah. So the others I think we're all familiar with, but it's very interesting that so many traditions take the focus of wisdom and love to the heart. I think we need to keep that in mind. Okay, so we've looked a little bit at mind, and now we're going to move along and take a little check into how we act. And every skillful action makes a better word. That's a tagline. I'm going to be a little cheeky and ask one of you to read the quotes. We've got a few quotes coming up, and I've spotted some folks I know hopefully won't mind doing that. So could I invite Denise to read this quote for us, Denise? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. How's the volume, Marian? Can you
Very
hear me?
good.
Okay.
Perfectly. Yes.
All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. Speak or act with your mind, and happiness will follow you as your shadow unshakable. From the Dhammapada, verse 1.
Thank you. I'm sure, again, many of you are familiar with this, but it's such a simple and basic idea that our thoughts will cause actions, not actions only of body, but of speech and of mind too. So how we think can translate into how we speak and how we act. We're propelled, we can be reactive or responsive. Our thinking mind can become something we are led along by, or that will follow us where we want to go. But how do we act? How do we act in everyday life? Let's just close this while we moment. There you go. Yeah. Do we act in haste? This is just a bunch of questions because I was asking them to myself. Do we act out of fear and anxiety? Ourselves from perceived threats, or are we acting out of a wish to connect and live harmoniously with others and our environment? Do we pause before we act? Do we take time to respond from the heart? Do we go with our gut feeling, or do we allow our rational mind to override that? Do we acknowledge our motives for our actions? As a parent, do we act for the benefit of our children? As a teacher, do we act for the benefit of our pupils? As a scientist, do we act for the benefit of our community? How do we reflect on what benefit might be? What might it look like? We say actions speak louder than words. Why is that? There's a bunch of questions there, but I'm not going to ask you to answer them. Maybe they're food for thought. I think for me, the most critical thing is, are we reactive or are we responsive? When we act, do we act with thoughtfulness and awareness of what the possible consequences of our actions might be? Okay. So together we'll explore now another tool which may help us to understand how we act affects us and how our actions touch our inner being. Okay. So this is a wonderful mid-morning activity, I think, with some, or mid-afternoon or mid-evening. Thank you all for joining. And we're going to do a mind and heart reflection now. So let's take a moment again to sit in a relaxed and upright, just comfortable, so that as you breathe, the breath can just move easily through the body. So we're going to sit and just be spacious, silent, aware of our sense of connection here together, each of us in our own space, and yet connecting. Mind and heart reflection is a tool that we use and takes us deeply into a felt memory, if you like. It allows the mind and the heart to both relax spaciously and reflect on a time when we experienced a certain something. And in this case, we're going to reflect on a time when we were part of an act of kindness. If you can, reflect on something, bring something to mind. It could be quite small, something in the last week, at least perhaps a month, but the closer the better. When you met where you wished to make an act of kindness, when you were inspired or moved to act in a kind way, in an offering of kindness towards someone. However small, maybe it was in a grocery store, as you were driving, maybe you just stepped aside in the street as someone walked past to allow them space. Maybe it was with a child, someone who needed your help. Let's take a moment now to bring that to mind and heart. Just reflect on that word of kindness and allow that to rest in your heart space. Bring that to mind, however small, that moment when you acted out of a sense of kindness. It may have been on your own. You may have written a note to someone. It may even have been simply a kind wish, a thought. Maybe it was a very practical gesture too. So when you've come to a thinking and remembering such a moment that you've experienced recently, just take a moment to recall the situation, who might have been with you or involved with this time, allowing them to come present. And recall the event, just quite graphically, as if you're watching a short video. And then allow yourself to come into a heart space, gently letting your mind rest there, to see how did that feel? How did it feel for you, and how might it have felt for whoever, if there was a person was receiving it? Maybe it was an animal. But how might it have felt? But how did you feel? What emotions or understandings came to you? Thoughts? And now allow those thoughts to perhaps crystallize into one or two words or a short phrase that you can share with the rest of us, with this group here today, to express that understanding, that learning, or that feeling that you had at that time. So let's just keep those words and phrases in mind and gently come back together. And if you would kindly share them in chat, that would be fantastic. And we can share them together. Each of us can take a look. openness and contentment. Warm and tender, openness and warmth and togetherness. Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. Spacious. Petri said open, soft joy. And Glenda wrote warm, open, and joy. Krista said felicidad, happiness. Ruth Cook says, I felt some concern for the other. I believe the other person felt some joy. Thank you, Ruth. Yes. So when we make choices, or we find that we're acting in ways that bring us and then other joy. Sylvia said, I felt honored to connect and happy. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. We bring ourselves a sense of warmth. We move into a really a helpful and open, spacious, as you've said, space in which there's many possibilities. Yeah. So how can we act in ways during these challenging times, which could be of benefit to our friends, our family, and our global community? Many of us, I think, are asking these questions now, more than perhaps in the past. Maybe we can begin by attending to the possibility of change and transformation brought through our choices of how we act. Yeah, each one small action at a time. Thank you. Yeah, that's really. So each time we choose to act in a useful, helpful, out from our heart-based, heart-centered based space, rather than perhaps how our logical mind is telling us, maybe we make choices that can bring warmth and joy into our lives, the lives of others. Okay, so that's the second step in how we act, and of course, the logical sequence to that is how we find meaning. But first of all, we have to go to how we relate. Just to share this wisdom theme 3, how we relate to others. Cherish, whoops, you can't see that yet. Ooh, okay, cherish others. Independence is a myth. So this is Ram Dass, who bless him, passed away a year ago, but was so funny and so enlightened, such a wonderful man who brought so much of these understandings to the West. If you think you are so enlightened, go and spend a week with your parents. Well, I can see Victoria smiling. When I have taught level 1s, I always say at this point, now please note, that's a week, not a weekend. We can often do a weekend, but a week is maybe more. And yeah, I think that's something we all need to recognize our own, our limits. And so I love that. Okay, great. So here we go into how we relate. We can see that acting mindfully out of the wish and from the motivation to be of benefit can be instrumental in transforming how we relate to others. Yeah. It is said that a smile is the shortest distance between two people. Have you tried it recently? I have to say, I find it way more difficult when I'm wearing a mask, which is still quite an obligation here. I find myself smiling and then realizing that I need to try smiling with my eyes because people can't see my face, my mouth. So that's a challenge. But at the same time, just as maybe a week with our parents, wishing to live in the wisdom theme of how we relate is often the case. It's often the case that we encounter challenges in our relationships which can't be solved with a simple smile. So universal education offers a practical and helpful tool that can be useful in reframing future situations that may be challenging or troubling. And this is a tool, I have to say, that many people who have trained in our programs absolutely find so useful. It's a portable tool that we can take with us wherever we go, as long as we have a pack of 16 guidelines cards on us. And even without those, we can often make use of it. So by using this tool of reframing or pre-reframing, we are going to, in conjunction with the 16 guidelines card, we can shift our habitual perspective. We can view through a lens which has a different, gives us a different experience of what it means to be connecting or dealing with a certain situation. The lens that we're most likely to perceive or interpret a perceived future event will be the one that we've habitually taken on. So when we change that lens, when we look from a different perspective, we can really, it can be quite startlingly helpful. And I think many of us have found that in the past when we've done this experience. I certainly remember times when I was quite surprised and almost shocked by the power that reframing or pre-framing has to really be helpful and beneficial and take us into a transformed space of relationship. So let's do a pre-frame. I hope you're not tired of doing little exercises and reflections, but I kind of enjoy them myself. We're going to pre-frame, and I'd like us just to take a moment, just to relax in our space and reflect on a present or a future difficult or problematic relationship or situation with a person that we know is going to come up, but we'd like to take a look at it and see if we can't make it easier, make it more useful, more beneficial for both us and whoever the other person might be. It might be a being, not necessarily human. Maybe we have a situation coming up with an animal like my dog that barks sometimes too much. How do we deal with these things? And clearly, we need to think of a situation that is not too dramatic, too extreme. So, you know, if you from 1 to 10, with 10 being, you know, the ultimate horrendous divorce that's coming up, to 1 which is not much of anything. Let's work in the 3 to 5 range, something that we'll be used to reframe. Okay. So for those of you who are familiar with this practice, you're probably already going, but well, what about the cards? Because we use the cards to reframe. Don't worry, I've got that covered. So don't, just relax. And let's think about this moment, this time. Something maybe right now, tomorrow, something next week. Maybe we have to approach a situation we're not quite sure the best way to deal with it. Maybe there's something that we're a little bit concerned about, or maybe to do with our work. As the holiday season's coming up, maybe we're going to be interacting with folks we don't see very often. Maybe we'd like some support there. So let's think about why that is problematic for us. Normally we do this in pairs, but to keep things simple, I thought it would be interesting to do it individually for a change. So we can sort of talk ourselves through as we would share that with a friend or another person. Just really unpack a little bit. Well, why is that? Why is it bothering me? What is it that's troubling me about this? So take a look at it for a moment or two. Okay. Now, if you like, you can write a few notes down, or at least just keep in mind what you're thinking about. Now I'm going to ask you to think of a number from 1, 2, 3, or 4. Don't worry about why, just choose one of those numbers, whichever one seems good to you. Okay, you've got that number there? Okay. So here we go. Now, if you chose 1, you chose respect. 2 was forgiveness. 3 was gratitude, and 4 was loyalty. And how would that be if you applied whichever one of those 4 guidelines for this wisdom theme? If you applied that guideline of respect, forgiveness, gratitude, or loyalty to the question that you were wanting to take a look at, the challenge, present or future. Let's take each little moment to reflect on that. Is it helpful? How could it be helpful? Sometimes it seems to be completely inapplicable or inappropriate. Sometimes that's also the time when it's the most useful, but the most difficult to kind of understand. The other day I was doing this and the person said to me, sometimes the next morning you suddenly realize how that can be applied in a situation. It doesn't always come right away. So if anybody wants to perhaps share back with us, we're not a huge group, so we could you could just speak up if you'd like to about if that was helpful at all or not. Oh no.
I'm
Who
on
wants
mute.
to talk? Okay.
I'll talk.
All right.
I'll talk.
Yeah.
So yeah, mine was for next week. I'm visiting my brother and sister-in-law, and you know, it's a decent car trip, road trip, so I was imagining, well, how do I want that to go? And I just need to focus on relaxing, taking it easy. And that's hard. It's like all these practical things to talk about or organize. It's like, no, time out, time to relax. And so when I applied, my number was number 3, was gratitude. And so simply put, I feel so lucky to have such lovely people to be able to go visit. Yeah, so that's it.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, just turns our mind in a different way on the situation, which can be so useful. Great. Anyone else like to share? It's not obligatory. I'd like to, before I
can see Lisette. I can see Lisette.
Oh, okay,
with
thank
her
you.
hand up.
Yeah, please do. Oh, okay, there she is. Hi. Hey, Lisette.
No, it was just a simple thing. I promised somebody, a good friend, I promised her to help out with the move to a house. And I simply have to say no. And I know I promised, and I feel very bad about saying no. And my number was number 2, and it was forgiveness. And then I thought, oh yeah, it's not that difficult. If I just be really transparent why I'm saying no, because I have good reasons, and be very clear, and that I actually really feel guilty of saying no, instead of making all kinds of stupid excuses because there's always something practical you can make as an excuse. I could just be open and honest about it, and that there's a good reason, and I really feel guilty. So it makes it actually really clear to me.
I don't want you to feel guilty. I want you to forgive yourself too, and say that,
Yeah. But it's actually to say what I feel. Actually, I thought, oh, that's actually really easy.
Good. That just released it into an easy space. That's great. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah. Thank you. Great. So we're going to have our discussion soon. But I just wanted to note something which I think is really helpful and beneficial in these times, especially. Talk a little bit about loving kindness practice, because when we're talking about how we relate, we often think of direct relationships, verbal, physical, practical, and wonderful, like Lisette said, helping her friend, like Ruth mentioned, going to visit people. But there's a secret strategy that you can do from your very own couch without ever leaving home, which can be fantastically helpful. And it's called loving kindness practice. When you make that choice of engaging our full being in the process, we can choose to reach out and transform relationships in a globally expansive way without ever leaving home base. It's a super practical and very useful solution in these times of current global travel issues and questions. And I don't usually share personal stuff, but I do want to say that I will, because I think this taught me the profound usefulness of loving kindness. I did a lot of retreat many years ago, 25 years ago, and I had a very difficult relationship with my mother. And I decided to use this time in retreat of 3 months to send loving kindness to my mother, to see, it was like really a scientific research experiment as well as a practice, to see if I could ease the situation, if I could develop a more loving and kind and open relationship. And after 3 months, it really was amazing. I went to visit her. She was in England. I was in France. So I'm back from France, wondering, apart amongst other things, how that would be. It totally transformed the relationship. I don't know how, I can't explain it, but I know that loving kindness practice, whether it's for an individual person or whether it's for just a global wish, I think it really works. So give it a try, maybe we can do science research this way. So yeah, and I just want to add that, Richard Davidson, who's a great research scientist and works closely with the Dalai Lama, he's shown that mind training practices and compassion and empathy have a more positive and adaptive effect on brain structure than mindfulness itself, just simple mindfulness practice. So that's great, isn't it? So hopefully it can have that profound effect on us, but in a different way, profound effect on whoever we're practicing for. Thank you. So how we find meaning. It's your turn to do some talking now, because I think I've done quite a lot of it up to now. I'm going to share this out a bit more fairly. So how we find meaning. If everything is changing, many things are possible. Wangari Maathai, I think she passed away in the last year or two. I don't know if anyone can confirm that. But anyway, if you understand, sorry, I can't, I've got my little screen over my words. Okay, if you understand and you are disturbed, then you are moved to action. That's exactly what happened to me. Yeah, she was an amazing woman who really accomplished great things. We're going to do a discussion. We're going to go into small groups, 4 people perhaps, or 3 possibly. We're going to discuss for 20 minutes, how do we need to be to experience deep, holistic meaning in our life? And by holistic, I mean bringing all the different threads of our life into one space, seeing that they are not separate. And yet sometimes, I don't know about you guys, but for me, it can feel separate, yeah? How do we need to be to experience deep, holistic meaning in our lives? And as a second question, if you'd like to bring it into your conversation, what is the meaningful role of community? How can we be in community? And please keep in mind these 2 bottom lines here. Maybe another voice would be nice. Hillary, would you mind reading those 2 lines, those 2 little sections in the gray for us?
Yeah.
Would that be okay? Thank you, dear.
So recognizing that we share with all beings the wish to experience happiness and well-being. Acknowledging our boundaryless interconnection and interdependence, not only with humans and other beings, but with the entire planetary and intergalactic system.
Thank you. Thanks, Hilary. Lovely to hear your voice. It's been too long. Right, so Michaela, who's going to be doing the tech, is going to post those questions for us. We'll have 20 minutes. I'm sure she'll give you some warnings before the end of that time together. And then we'll have some time after that, if you want to share back any thoughts or ideas or feelings that have come up for you during either this session or more particularly with your discussions. It'd be great to hear back from you with that. You're welcome to ask one person to take some notes if one person in the group's willing to do that, but if otherwise we can just open it up to sharing. Okay, so if we're all ready for that, I'll ask Michaela to divide this into groups. I think everyone's familiar with that practice, so I don't need to explain it further. But do take a moment to introduce yourselves to each other if you don't know each other already. Thank you, Michaela.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had wonderful discussions in your breakout groups. If people would like to think about their responses and share their responses, you have an opportunity now. You can speak on behalf of your group or on behalf of yourself. Are there any people who would like to share? How do we feel? How do we find meaning? How do we find meaning? And how do we need to be to find meaning? And how do we express that deep holistic meaning in our life? And the second part was like, what is the meaningful role of the community, or how should you be meaningful within a community? So inviting people to share.
Just jump in.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll jump in on one point that came up very quickly, is that the need to be aware and present to one's life, to what we're doing, to come out of autopilot and automatic reactions and behavior. That was really a very common point between the four of us who shared in our group. I won't go into the other steps immediately.
Thanks, Hilary. Wendy? Just seeing Wendy, Sandy. Hi.
One of the common things that we shared was that in terms of how we need to be, it was actually relaxed, and that it open, kind, and it's a very, very ongoing process. Thank you.
You seen Bruno? Hi, Bruno.
So one point that came out suddenly, that also they were looking like two different questions. Then suddenly the two came melt together, because of course there is some point that give to me so direction, give meaning to my life. But then it came out immediately that the sense of community that can be in a small sense or in a very vast sense is fundamental to complete this sense of meaning to life. So this was something that came up suddenly and very interesting.
Thank you. I don't know.
Lisette? Lisette?
Yeah, I was in Bruno's group, and I really, to add on what he just said, what I really liked is when we talked about community, that there were three perspectives that kind of stuck to my mind. I was talking about the perspective of being part of a small community here in a small village, and how the heartfelt feeling that you feel at home in a certain place. And then Bruno was actually talking about no matter where you are, even in a big city and you're alone, but you feel so connected with whomever around you. And I loved Ruth talking about the fact I have a community within myself, because there's so many different people within myself. So I love the 3 different perspectives on community.
Thank you. Any other comments, responses?
Maybe I can just add that the reason for that second, that what Bruno said looked like a separate question, was really that sense that without, we are all interactive, and interdependent. So there is that sense of community that whether we I was going to say like it or not, whether we recognize it or not, we are inevitably part of a community. Yeah, small, large, global. And I think these days that becomes even more evident. So, but it's clear, isn't it, that it starts with ourselves. It starts with who we are, how we think, how that thinking encourages us to act in certain ways, and discourages us or helps us to let go of unhelpful actions. And that really brings benefit to our relationships and to that community. And if it's simply a matter of walking through a grocery store and acknowledging people in a kind way, that can make a huge difference to other people's lives. I think we can see that. And I think those small acts can spread. So yeah, thank you. Anything else? Denise, you've been remarkably quiet. I know it's early in the morning for you.
Yeah, my voice is not really working yet, but one thing we didn't talk about community was kind of from our roots, we have Buddha Dharma Sangha. Sangha is a big part of it. So we didn't actually talk about that, but I know my sister, who is a nun, just super values her nun community, right? And I think all of us have that sort of, whoever we have commonality with, it's really helpful. We talked a little bit about how that reinforces our common humanity, which is one of the components of Kristen Neff's self-compassion, is reinforcing that common humanity. And I think our community helps us to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a very good point, Denise. And here we are today in community, in whatever ways we can. We're building community all the time. And I know that one of the focal aspects of FDCW and its universal education programs has been to build community. And this is an example of those endeavors, is the whole conference and coming together to share. And especially in these times for me, living in relative isolation, it's super beneficial. So thank you to the team who've made that happen. There were just one more slide, if it's okay with you guys. If anyone wants to comment, that's just fine. Anyone else would like to say anything? I don't want to stop any sharing. But I wanted to share some quotes. If you've been to some of the courses I've run, especially the ones where I design them myself, sort of independently a little bit, I love my quotes. And I've got 4 that I'd really like to share with you. And in many ways, to me, they seem to relate to the 4 wisdom themes. And I try to make them pop up separately, but I need some more instruction on how to do those transitions. So meanwhile, they don't pop up. But anyway, here we go. I think how we think, impermanence can bring you both darkness and brightness. It is your mind that determines how the transformation goes. That was Sogyo Laka. And then in how we act, with the wonderful Mingyur Rinpoche, at any moment you can choose to follow the chain of thoughts and emotions that reinforce a perception of yourself as limited, or you can remember your infinite potential. And how we find meaning, the most interesting Ellen Wallace. What is needed is a societal revolution in our way of viewing reality, the meaning and potentials of human existence, a fundamental shift in our priorities. And finally, how we, and sorry, that's how we relate, not how we find meaning. That was very naughty of me, I got the wrong, but it doesn't matter because it's all good stuff. But how we find meaning is a wonderful 7th century Zen master, Matsu. Our enlightenment is already here, as is our kindness and our curiosity and our courage. So with 5 minutes to go, I think there was some little sharings we might do as part of this conference. I know that you can, the team and FDCW is very happy if you want to make a little donation. I know that's something I'm terrible at asking for that, doing that kind of thing, but I think it's important to recognize all the work that's gone in and how beneficial this is. And also already the videos, Michaela was telling me, the videos that have already happened, except, well, the one from Osel was just taking a little longer to put up, but there are already 2 up and you can go to them. Michaela, would you like to explain, because you're better at this than me, because you just did it. Would you be okay explaining how that works? If people want to watch the videos?
You can just return to the conference planner on the website, and the videos are being put up there progressively.
Okay, and they're just in that same screen that'll pop up. Great. Okay. Well, I want to thank, I don't know what else, but I want to thank each one of you. It's so wonderful to see people I haven't seen, and I've been so enjoyed being connected to in the past and seeing you again. And such deep friendships that have grown over the years between many of us. And it's just a really delightful to have some time together again. So I want to thank each one of you and to get to know people. I mean, Glenda, how wonderful. I haven't seen you for a while. And Hilary, my dear friend from France. So all of you, thank you very much. And of course, Bruno, you and I, we're good. So thanks everybody, and it's been a pleasure to be here and share a little bit. So from my point of view.
And thank you, Marian. Thank you so much for leading this session. I feel I've learned loads and I found it really powerful, and I'm sure others did the same. So thanks so much for taking time to prepare this and for sharing so beautifully.